Okay, so we will start now the first Yisoid. And what we're not going to do, like I said, is we're not going to discuss whether the correct route or the path to Emunah is through philosophical speculation, Hakira, or through just Emunah Pshuta, so-called Emunah Pshuta, just accepting what we're told, or a combination of both. That's a topic we've already dealt with. Instead, we're going to focus on what is the Rambam, how does the Rambam really understand what this first Yesod is? And we're going to uncover hopefully some interesting things that perhaps you didn't know until now. And we're going to look at three primary sources in the Rambam, and that is the Pirush HaMishnayos, which is where he discusses the Ikrim, right? Sefer HaMitzvos, and in the very beginning of his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah, Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. And the first Yesod is Metziusoi Yizbarach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's existence. Now, we're going to do something, we're going to learn some Kabbalistic sources, and there's a reason for that, which you will discover. But I want to draw your attention first. We're going to start backwards. We're going to start from source 4, which is the Ani Maamin. Now, the Ani Maamin, as you know, I think we discussed it right at the beginning. This is not the Lashon Rambam. It is old, but it's not the Lashon Rambam. But it helps focus us on some really interesting things. Let's just quickly read and translate it. And I want to try and make this a little bit more interactive. I've been reflecting a little bit, and I want to try and have a little bit more interactivity. Okay? So we're going to read and translate it, and I'm going to ask you on the basis of what we have here in Ani Maamin, what do you think is the focus or the definition of the first of the Ikrim? Okay? Ani Maamin b'Emunah Shalema. Sheha Boirei Yizbarach Shemai. That the Creator, may his name be blessed, Hu Boirei Umanhig L'chol HaBaruim, that he creates and leads all creatures, and he alone did, does, and will do all actions. Well, what does that say to you? Well, what's your impression of what's going on over here, Eli?
It's Hashem's Metzius is taken as a given.
Nice. Nice.
As something.
Good. And I think that's very insightful. That's brilliant. Because look, we say Ani Maamin. What do I believe? That the Creator is da 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 da. In other words, that's axiomatic. That's not a postulate. That is there. I believe that the Creator is the Boirei Manhig L'chol HaBaruim, and he alone is whatever. But we're actually taking his existence for granted. Now, true, this is not the Lashon of the Rambam, but it's beginning to reveal. That's the first point. I'm glad you came up with that. That's great. That's really, really significant. And remember that thought. But let's move on. That the Boirei Yizbarach Shemai. So who Boirei. He creates. First of all, notice that it's in the present tense. Okay. And it doesn't just stop with talking about Hashem as a creator. It's talking about Hashem as a manhig. It's not just somebody who sort of, so to speak, wound up, a clockwork universe, and he wound it up and left the mechanism to its own devices, but he is actively involved in the operation. So we're talking about Hashgacha, not just Hashem qua creator, but Hashem as being Hashgacha, being involved. He's Manhig L'chol HaBaruim. And we don't stop there. It says, and he alone, so now we're coming into exclusivity. And this is something I'm going to touch on very quickly. I'm just going to mention it. Negative theology. The Rambam devotes at least, I think it's 20 or 30 prokim in the first chelik of Moreh Nevuchim to put forward an idea that the only thing we can ever say about the Ribbono Shel Olam is what he isn't. Negative theology, and other Rishonim go along with it. It also has Lahavdil Elef Havdalos in Thomas Aquinas and others. There's a lot of talk about it, but we're not going to really delve into it. But at some point it is going to become sort of kind of relevant. The Ramchal sort of based Das Tvunos on this in a sense, because Yichud Hashem is infinite. That means anything you say about him, you can't say anything meaningful about any quality of his, except a quality whose very definition is perhaps a negative. Yichud Hashem, because the definition of Yichud is that there is no other. It's Ein Oid. He's Levadai. Micha Moicha Ba'al Gevuros. Umidoi Melach. And then you can say something meaningful if the quality itself is expressed definitionally as a negative. That there is no other. Echad means there's no sheni, there's no other. And that's the Levadai. But okay, I've mentioned it, done. We're not going to really delve into it. But he himself is Osav Ha'Isav Yaseh L'chol HaMa'asim. And this is how, in the Siddur, this is how it's put. Let's see whether this fits with what now we'll go to the primary sources, the texts, okay? Let's have a look. So the beginning is the Pirush HaMishnayos, so let's learn it. HaYisoid HaRishon, the first Yisoid, is Metzius HaBoirei Yishtabach. For the moment, I'm just going to translate it as existence. And you're going to discover, actually, this is not correct. A very interesting word. We're going to talk about what the word motzah. What does the word motzah normally mean? To find. So we're talking about, we're going to see the Rambam uses words about he is nimtza, he is motsui. So, and from that we have metzius. So it's really, really interesting if you think philologically or etymologically or semantically or whatever, all these sort of, when we're talking about words and what they mean and how, when we use them, we in Lashon HaKodesh now, we have a word for what we translate as reality, objective reality, but the word we use for it is metzius. By the way, this word is not in Tanakh in this context. Never ever found in Torah Shebichsav in this context. To find or to Hashem as it were. Doesn't exist. So it's a concept. But is this not interesting? Let me just ask you a philosophical question. We have a word for, metzius is the word for reality. Now, reality surely has its own objective truth. Something either is or isn't. It's binary. Something either exists or it doesn't. And therefore, surely it would seem to be strange to use a root of a word which means to discover something, to find something. To use that word for reality is philosophically quite troubling because it suggests that there was nothing there. It doesn't have its own objective reality, but you found something. You are involved in the process. Why should your involvement in the process be relevant at all? And that's even before we get to Schrödinger's cat or any of that sort of stuff, or John Wheeler's, observing the two-slit experiment. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, doesn't matter. But that's not the point here, or is it? And this is something we're going to see. I must admit, this came as a chiddush to me when I was delving into this. I'd never thought about that properly. You hear the thought? Yeah. It's a really important, and we're going to, let's see what we can do with it. Also, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to come to that. Now, the who.
Hashem, we're always only trying to uncover.
We're going to go deeper than that. You're absolutely right, and we're going to take it even further. What you said is correct, but I only recently discovered more, and this is what I'm excited to share with you. V'hu sheyesh shom motsui b'shleimus oifanei hametzius. There is an entity that is to be found. I'll try. It's very hard to translate. He's motsui in b'shleimus oifanei hametzius, in the ultimate aspects of reality, but I'm not doing it justice. And we're going to see later why I'm struggling. The who and this entity that is perfect is ilas metzius kol hanimtzoim. He is the cause of the existence of anything that is to be found, anything that exists. Ubai kiyum metziusam, and in him or in him is their existence. Let me give it to you in English.
The Mokum.
He's the Mokum. Yeah, very good. Mokum, says the Maharal, is Miloshon Mekayim. Okay. By the way, if you take Yud Kei Vav Kei squared, is Mokum. Yud times Yud, Hey times Hey, Vav times Vav. It's a Tikkun Isaiah. Anyway, and that's another whole schmooze. But let's go back over here. In philosophical terms, it's called non-contingent existence. right? They're doing a lot of work now. There's a guy called, he's gone out of my head. Totally gone out of my head. Is it Krauss? Whatever. When we say the word, when you say a word, and we're gonna have to try and explain this a little bit. Ayin and yesh. We talk about yesh me ayin, right? Something from nothing. We need to understand what ayin means, because ayin, sort of in Kabbalah, ayin is the sphere of Keseh. Ha-chochma me ayin timotze comes from ayin. And we'll have to understand what that means. Why it's relevant here is, we are talking about, there is only one existence. Let's take it at the simple level. Let's start off simple. There is only one non-contingent existence. There is one self-justifying, if that's the right word. There is one thing that is and has to be. Nothing else has to be. I don't have to be. This table does not need to be. And therefore, the existence of the table is contingent upon something else in the causality, in the chain of cause and effect. Where you bring into existence Rotzoin, there is only one thing, the Rebbeinu Shalom, that is. That's why the deepest name that we have for him is Yud Kei Vav Kei, which just means existence. He just is. And that's why, by the way, the mitzvah of emunah, which is a paradox, right, which we've discussed a little bit, you know, if you don't accept the existence of the commander, then then this non-existent commander can't command you, because he doesn't exist. And if you do accept his existence as a commander, then he doesn't need to command you to believe in him. So Anochi seems to be a bit reductio ad absurdum. And the way around it, at one level at least, is to understand that it is couched in language not of a command, although it may be one. It's just a simple statement of existence. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am. I just am. It's a statement which parallels, by the way, the first of the Asara Ma'amoris Shabbai Nivra Ha'olam, the Ma'amoris morphing into Dibros. The first one is Bereshis. Says the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Bereshis Nami Ma'amarhu. Of the 10 utterances with which he created the world, the first one is Bereshis. It's just a statement in the beginning. Anochi, I am. Anyway, I'm getting a bit carried away there. So this, when we say, the Rambam is defining that the first Yesod is the existence of an entity that is, that has to be, and whose existence is not dependent on anything else. Everything else, the existence of everything else is contingent and leads back to him, and therefore they are not necessary. And he is the only thing that absolutely is, and every other form of existence is contingent upon him and not the other way around. That's what he's saying. Were we to be able to imagine the absence of his existence, then there would automatically nothing would or could exist. Nothing would exist. Were we able to imagine the absence of everything other than Hashem, his existence would still be imperative, self-justifying, infinite and eternal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his existence has no need of anything outside of his existence. And anything that we may encounter other than him, even in the most sublime intellectual creatures, Malochim, Garmei Galgalim, Umashalamata Mehen, Hakoil Zokuk Bimtziusoi Elov, they are all contingent upon necessary outcomes of his existence. V'zeh Yesod Harishon Hu Hashem Moira Olav Dibur Anochi Hashem Elokecha. And this is the first Yesod, which is indicated by the Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Okay? So this is the Rambam in Pirush Mishnayos. Any questions, or should we continue? We're good? Let's go weiter. Now we come to the Sefer HaMitzvos. The Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos, the very first mitzvah, he writes, HaMitzvah Horishoina, the first mitzvah is, Hu'atzivu yashetzivonu laha'amin ha'elokus. I want to add a very quick parenthesis, very, very quick note. Rav Kapach and Reb Chaim Heller, in their edition of the Sefer HaMitzvos, which was written in Arabic, as opposed to Mishnah Torah, They point out that the word, I think it's at-kad or something, I forget the word in Arabic, but they agree that the word is to know. V'hushanamin, this laha'amin, v'hushanamin is that the translation really should be that we know, because otherwise we're going to end up with a potential contradiction in the Rambam, which if you quickly look down to source 3, where in Hilchos Yesod HaTorah he says, I want the Chachma, Leida. So there are a bunch of Mefarshim who there's a lot of talk about whether it is or isn't a contradiction in the Rambam, because in Yad, which was written in Lashon HaKodesh, he says, Leida, to know that there is a God, and whether it's in Sefer HaMitzvos, he says, Laha'amin olakus. In reality, it's not an issue at all, because as they Rav Kafach and Chaim Heller point out, the word, the meaning of it, and the translation in Sefer HaMitzvos is to know. Okay, so that's got out of the way. Now, what is it? So the mitzvah, the first mitzvah is tzivanu laha'amin ha'elakus, to know shena'amin sheyeshom ila v'siba. There is a cause, a cause, and yes, there are two ways of saying a cause. Now, actually, sorry, I realized. You know what? Let's just go further. Let's go further. That there is
risk of you to say that
what?
Same meaning. It can mean the same thing.
Yes. Okay. Maybe one. Okay, you push me. I don't know, but I'll speculate. A proximate cause and an indirect cause. I'd have to know what ilah and sibah, the difference in the Rambam's nomenclature. I don't know. You got me. Okay. You say that. Good. No, I know. Good point. Lay there.
Sibah is a cause,
And ilah.
and ilah is a potentially to be a cause.
Yacholiyot. You'd have to prove that. Well, we'd have to prove that. Noira alila al bnei adam. In Pasuk in Tehillim. You have to know what ilah, so ilah is. Okay, that's a good question. I don't have a good answer. But either way, the Rebbeinu Shalom is the origin, cause for who poyel l'chol hanimtza'os. And he poyel. This is really interesting. Now he uses a word poyel. He activates, he operates. How would we best translate that? And by the way, go back to Pirush Mishnayos. Does he talk there at all about the operation of the world, of the Malachim, of anything? No. I think the focus in the Pirush Mishnayos is their existence. My reading of the Pirush Mishnayos is the focus is on non-contingent existence versus contingent existence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the only Metzios that has to be, and the existence of everything else does not need to exist, and they exist outside, they come up from him. Whereas here, he is introducing, I'm just pointing out, I think, he's introducing something new. Poyel l'chol hanimtza'os.
Is that not comparable to manhig?
Absolutely.
So it's like a driving force.
Where do you have manhig in the Pirush Mishnah? Sorry, maybe I missed it. Where?
Oh, no, that wasn't the...
Exactly. You're right. You're very good. You're very good. Boirei umanhig. So the Lashon in the Animamins is Boirei umanhig, and we're going to have to see what they correspond to. But I'm pointing out that in the Pirush Mishnayos, there does not appear to be any mention of anything other than existence. Here, he brings in something else now, and this is poyel l'chol hanimtza'os. He poyel, does that mean he made them? Or he operates them? I'm a little bit unclear. And here now the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos does something really interesting. And this is, we need to ask ourselves, why does he bring in this Gemara? Let's learn the Gemara. The Gemara sagt in the end of Makos, Omru Tariag Mitzvos Nemru LeMoshe Misinai. 613 mitzvahs said to Moshe Misinai. My Kara, what's the pasuk? Torah tzivalanu Moshe. Kaloimar minyan Torah. Torah's gematria 611. Yeah, that's the Gemara says. So Torah tzivalanu Moshe. Moshe gave us 611. Behikshu al zeh, the Gemara asks, V'amru Torah begematria hachi hava shit ma'ah v'chadsari havoy. But Torah is only 611. How could you say? Asks the Gemara that 613 was said l'Moshe Misinai. V'hoisa had teshuva, and the Gemara there answers, very important Gemara, Anoichi v'lo yihyeh mipi hagvura shamanum. The first two, Anoichi and lo yihyeh, we heard from Hashem, but Torah, which is 611, tzivalanu Moshe. But the other two, we heard from Hashem. Hinei kvar hizbayer lecha ki Anoichi Hashem Michlal sheish meos ushloish esrei mitzvos. So now you have seen the Rambam is using this Gemara to demonstrate that what? That Onoichi is a mitzvah from that Gemara. Sorry? I wonder lots of things. I can't even start there. You're right. We are going to, I'm going to try very hard. It's hard for me not to get pulled away, but I'm going to try very hard to be focused, and we're going to focus on the Shittas Rambam. So, the Rambam is bringing this text to prove, seemingly, that's his reason for bringing this Gemara. Okay, there is stuff that we could say about that. Because without this Gemara, I wouldn't know that Anochi is actually a mitzvah, and maybe.
Is that so clear that we wouldn't know without this Gemara?
I think the answer might be it's a statement, because it's a statement. See, lo yiyeh
right.
We'll have to see what he says in the mitzvah, in the Sefer Mitzvah of lo yiyeh, because there it's couched as a command. Lo yiyeh lecha Elohim acherim, and we'll get to that. But this one is a statement, Anochi. So he uses this Gemara as a proof to say that it's a mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? Because the Gemara says Tariag mitzvos. We have 613 mitzvos, on which the Gemara asks, Moshe only gave us 611. Says the Gemara, no, 2 we got from Hashem. So you see that it's a mitzvah. That's what he's bringing the Gemara for. I will, not in this year, and maybe not even in the next, there's an incredible Maharsha on this Gemara, which I'm going to use. Remind me, and I'll bring it in and put it in the source sheets later on, when we talk about unity and fragmentation, and what this really means. But let's move on. So those are the 2 sources. The third one is the Rambam in Yad. Now here, as you know, the Yad he wrote in Lashon HaKodesh, and this is how he opens up his magnum opus, the Mishnah Torah, Yad HaChazaka. These are the very first. Hilchos Yesod HaTorah, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph. Yesod HaYesodos Va'amud HaChochmos. Now, this is not merely a device which many Mefarshim used to start off with Havaya. It's more than that, because the Rambam, there's more. This is the way that we learn Rambam. There's Yesodos and there's Chochmos. The Yesod, the foundation of all foundations, and the pillar of Chochmos. What are these 2 things? What are the Yesodos and the Chochmos? The Mefarshim discuss this. Just remember that comment. What is it, or what are they? What is it? Leida sheyesh shom motzi rishon. To know that there is there a first cause, an entity, the first entity. Now, the Mefarshim in the Kesef Mishnah here, they're ready to talk about what's the shom. Where's there? There's not a place, and for the moment we will leave it. But it means that there is. The Ramchal in Derech Hashem, at the beginning of Derech Hashem, uses exactly the same lashon of sham, and they discuss it. Yeah, right at the beginning.
By the way, I just wanted to add Anochi is a sign of Kisei HaKavod.
Okay. Arya Neshe Kruv Yaakov. Yeah. Yaakov. Yeah, that's Achen. You know the Megala Amukos? No, Yaakov. Yaakov Barur.
Yaakov is a Kisei HaKavod?
Yaakov Barur. It's Chazal.
יעקב זה יוד עקב, וישראל זה יוד לראש.
נכון, אבל אם כזה, it's דמוס יעקב, it's בדמוס יעקב, they don't say דמוס ישראל on the case, יעקב, דמוס יעקב. But that's not for now. By the way, the Megala Amukos, I think it is, says, if I'm not mistaken, beautiful, Yaakov is on the, when he's having his dream, now that you brought it in, Yaakov has his dream, Achein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, Arya Kruv Nesher, but I didn't know. The Malachim went up and they saw the same face that was down there. So Achein Yesh Hashem Aleph Arya Kruv Nesher, that they knew Yeshua, but Anochi, which is another Yud, Arya Kruv Nesher Yaakov Lo Yadati. That I didn't know. Anyway, that's just beautiful. Anyway, by the way, let's go back. To know that there is a first entity. V'hu mamtzi kol nimtza. And he brings into existence, now here we're getting a little bit more shades of the Sefer HaMitzvahs. Here we're talking about action and activity. He brings into existence everything that is to be found. V'chol hanimtzoim mishamayim va'oretz u'masha beinehem lo nimtzeu elo me'amitas himotzoi. How many times have we had that root in that sentence? Motzoi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. That root, mem tzadik aleph, manifests 6 times in one sentence. So it's clearly central. And we're going to get to grips with what we mean by that in a minute. Let's go over that again. Yesod V'Amud HaChochmos is to know that there is a primary, maybe better than first, a primary entity. And it is this entity, Hashem, that brings into existence everything that is to be found. And everything that is to be found anywhere can only be found from the truth of his existence. Amitas himotzoi. And we're going to have to ask ourselves, what on earth does that mean? From the truth of his existence. Halacha base. Were you able, somehow, rather stupidly, to conjecture, to come up with the idea that perhaps Hashem does not exist, then nothing could exist, because he is the root and the only thing that is, all exists, anything that exists or is to be found is contingent upon him and can only exist to the extent that it is connected to him. Okay. Halacha Gimel. And were you able to speculate and think about the possibility of there being nothing existing other than Hashem himself? Ein oid milevadoi. Yeah, ring any bells? Then he would continue to exist. The fact that nothing else exists is irrelevant. They all need him, and he doesn't need them, and not any of them, or not one of them, which is again an interesting phrase. Therefore, therefore his truth, the truth of his existence, is unlike the truth of anybody else's. Halacha dalet. Hu shehanovi omer v'Hashem Elokim emes. Here's really interesting. The Rambam moves on now to talking about emes. Emes. We have emes ve'emunah. Emes ve'emunah. And this should begin to give us some... We're talking about emunah, and then we're talking about emes. Emes is something that is... I just want to raise this point. Emes and emunah are not the same thing. Emes ve'emunah kol zois. Ihu emes ve'ihi emunah, even without going into the depth of it. Emes is something that is. Emunah is something that requires work. There's different levels of emunah. There's not different levels of emes. Something is emes. And here he's bringing in a new idea here, and this is important. We'll come back to it. Hu shahanovi oimer v'Hashem Elokim emes. Hu levadoi ha'emes ve'ein la'acher amit emes ka'amitosoi. He alone is the truth, and nothing else can have any form of truth which is in any way like his truth. V'hu sha'Torah oimeres ein oid milvadoi. K'loimar ein shom motzoi emes milevadoi. There is no entity that is true other than him, like him. Still a little bit unclear. We've got work to do.
Chazal said Alma de Shikra.
That's part of it, yeah. But we need to go beyond. You're right. You're absolutely right. But I want to hopefully see if we can even start today. We'll go a little bit further. Halacha hey, hamotzui hazeh. This entity. Hu Elohei ha'olam adoin kol ha'oretz. Now we're moving from existence. Very good. We're moving from boirei to manik. Look at this. Hamotzoi hazeh hu Elohei ha'olam adoin kol ha'oretz v'hu ha'manik ha'galgal b'koyach she'en lo keitz v'tachlis b'koyach she'en lo hefsek sha'galgal seviv tamid v'efshe she'yisov b'lo mesavev v'hu baruch hu ha'mesavev v'yisoi b'lo yad u'b'lo guf. The Rabbeinu Shalom is manig. Now here's interesting. He's a manig, but what is he a manig of? In Sefer HaMitzvahs it says, Hu po'el l'chol hanimtzo'os. Now, I know that's a translation from the Arabic, but assuming it's correct, he is po'el l'chol hanimtzo'os. He is po'el l'chol hanimtzo'os. Here we are saying, when we talk about Hashem operating, being mashgiach, leading the world, he uses the galgal, constellations, planetary motions, hamaniga galgal, in a way that it doesn't stop, because the galgal goes round, and it's not possible for something to go round if there isn't something that's pushing it. And the Rebbeinu Shalom, so to speak, rotates it and pushes it and is manhig it, but below yadu below guf. Why he throws that in now is interesting, because we're not yet talking about Hagshama. That's coming later. But it is the Rebbeinu Shalom who does it. And here he's introduced another element into, this is all part of the first mitzvah. And in fact, notice, I'm going to be ma'orah to you now, we have learned 5 halachas at the very beginning of his magnum opus, of his Mishnah Torah. 5 halachas, Yesodas, Amud HaChochmos, the most fundamental idea, Yesoda Rishon. There's a word missing in all of these 5 halachas, and that word is mitzvah. All other, generally speaking, in his Mishnah Torah, in his Yad HaChazaka, you look in the halachas, he starts off by saying mitzvah X, whatever the mitzvah is. Mitzvah livnois beis habechira. Da. He started off his whole chibur with 5 halachas of philosophical ideas, which are important, fundamental, and imperative, and then he comes in with halacha vav. V'yedias dovar zeh mitzvah saseh. This knowledge is a mitzvah. It's almost as if he's saying, what does that sound like to you?
That's the preconditions for it to be a mitzvah. There's no creator when there's no mitzvah.
That's correct and obvious, but I think he might be saying something else. The question is, it is the derech of the Rambam, generally speaking. This is a hilchos yesodei haTorah. Hilchos yesodei haTorah have halachos. That's the koteret. These are the halachos we're learning. And he always starts off with Kriya Shema. Mitzvah saseh, to read Kriya Shema, mitzvah saseh, mitzvah saseh, mitzvah saseh. And here is at the very beginning of his sefer. This is the most grundsätzlich. Yeah, da sagt man. This is the most fundamental concept. Yesodas, Amud HaChochmos. He gives us 5 halachas, and only in halacha vav does he come along and say, and everything I've told you until now, which is the basis of Yiddishkeit, Yesod HaRishon, Yesodas, and knowing this is a mitzvah saseh shenemar. What do you think that tells you? What does that say to you?
Well, I think
stylistically, or
he could have said everything the same way by starting that.
Yeah, that's the question.
And by not doing so, maybe he hints at not so much that obviously it's still a mitzvah. Doesn't depend who you are. If you're a Jew, it's a mitzvah you have to do. Probably also for all Jews. However, it seems like you're saying this is almost a precondition for.
Use a different word. You were doing very well. He used that word. I'm not
precondition, but like
this is
substance.
Yeah, this
person to enter the realm of being an agent.
Yes.
And enter the realm of an active.
Yes.
Choice maker.
Yes.
And doing this.
Yes.
And bad.
Yes.
You need some seichel, and that's the beginning.
It looks absolutely. You can put this in a number of different ways. You put it in your words. It looks as if he's first laying down, before we come to the concept of mitzvah, which is very important. There is first something called Yesod HaYesodos v'Amud HaChochmos. A person needs to, and he doesn't use the authority of the Torah to establish that. That's the Nakuda. It is something that is selbstverständlich. It's something that has to be. Yesod HaYesodos v'Amud HaChochmos. The following 5 halachas, the following 5 ideas or aspects of this idea are so essential and fundamental, they have to be. That means even if Lu Yitzuya, I mean, this is crazy, it's hypothetical. Lu Yitzuya, it wasn't technically a mitzvah. And there are Rishonim, there are not many, but hold maybe that it's not technically a mitzvah. Lu Yitzuya, Anochi Hashem Elokecha was not a mitzvah. You would still have to believe these things, by the way.
I don't know who, but some everywhere, but this expression of being orthoprax. And
Oh, please.
I think
I was having such a good day.
Said something like this, that you could be, or,
Yeah, let's not go there. The dogma, as it was known, the dogma of dogmalessness, as when they used to make fun. Okay, the dogma of dogmalessness. Yeah, you're talking. The Rambam.
But this is the opposite.
This is saying l'chura. There is something which is the yisodas v'amud hachachmos, and that has to be v'yedias davar zeh mitzvos aseh. And when you know this, you are mekayim a mitzvos aseh. Shenemar Anochi Hashem Elokecha v'chol hamale al da'atoi sheyesh shom eloya acher chutz mizeh. And if anybody would think that there is any form of God other than Hashem, you're over a loisase shenemar lo yilcholim acherim al ponai v'kofer beikar. Because you have denied by believing that there is another elemental, non-contingent existence and power, you've been kofer be'ikar, shezehu ha'ikar hagodoil shehakoil toloi boy. This is the big ikar upon which all else rests. And if you don't have this, you don't have anything. It also happens to be a mitzvah saseh, but it's almost, by the way, not quite. I don't mean it to be flippant or to be chas v'shalom, but it's. And here also, I'm going to pick up on this, and probably going to leave it here for today. But kofer beikar, the suggestion is that there is only one ikar, and this is what we're going to build on. The lashon of Chazal, it's in lashon of Gemara and other places. Kofer beikar. Why not kofer beikarim? If there are, the answer is there is only one. There is only one, but there are different aspects and elements to it, but there is only one. That's why 13 is Gematria Echad, Gematria Ahava. It's the totality of this one Ikar. There is only one thing, and I have to be careful what I say now. We will stop here. We'll stop here for today. What did you want to say, Eli?